"Hello?" he said rather impatiently. The voice at the other end was babbling on about Doviania's experiment on diffraction patterns. The research was 3 years old, but all of a sudden everyone wanted it, and fast. This caller was asking if the research data could be nuclear-mailed to the Lockefeller Institute. Dr. Voltin said yes, it could. He had a feeling of déjà vu as he put the receiver back down gently. Morale in the office was rather low than the normal today. The common office was now crowded, and it reminded him of the high street stores during sales. Dr. Demba had been in a rotten mood when he had arrived at 1 p.m. He had immediately cancelled Dr. Tundi's examiner's meeting, which hadn't made the old man exactly thrilled. Bolsani Venissa's joke about 3 skunks on vacation in Freya hadn't really helped either. Barlet Droba's funny one-liners were the only safe stress relievers. Dr. Voltin had received news of a project to build an artificial ozone layer just inside Klein Desimak, to be undertaken by the Barnanti Science Space. He'd heard that the idea had been Dr. Demba's. He'd heard that the idea had been Dr. Droba's. The layer could prevent the sun's energy from being tapped by the old world life forms. So far, though, it was all theory. No one really knew if it would work. The only good news on the horizon was that Dr. Suvana's diffraction research could help test this new idea at Barnanti. Nearly all the universities and physics institutes were calling in now to obtain the data. At least some people had something to work on. Dr. Voltin was at his wits' end. Sure, he was developing nucleomagnetic warheads to go with Book's transportron, but that in itself was an easy task. In any case, it would be absolutely useless if the transportron failed to work. Finding nothing to do presently, he decided to go down for a light meal in the canteen. He made his way downstairs. On the corridor, he bumped into a young scientist from Dionysi University named Dr. Quiman Grui. Quiman was holding up what looked like a diamond ring. "I found this on the floor of the physics library this morning, Dr. Voltin," he said. "Would you know who it belongs to?" Dr. Voltin took the ring and held it up to the light. It sparkled brightly. "No," he replied. "Sadly, I don't know anyone around here who could afford a gem like that. Welcome to the poverty-stricken world of academia, kid," he said jocularly. "But I'll show it to the others just in case." He took the ring from the young man. "Thank you, Dr. Voltin," Quiman said, and walked on towards the chemistry department. Saki regarded the ring. He was puzzled by it. Something wasn't quite right. He was sure it was too expensive looking to belong to any of his colleagues. Not that they were poor. It was just that it was not the kind of thing they wore, and definitely not to work. Still, he thought it could belong to one of the new scientists from out of town. There had been a lot of new recruits to the new projects they were working on. He went back to his office and placed the ring in a drawer at his desk. He would leave a note on the notice board and also mention it at the project meeting first thing tomorrow morning. He headed back towards the canteen. Jajan Kotak's program of training had consisted of 8 hours of hypnotism a day for a week. He had also been taught everything there was to know about life on that faraway planet Falrus. Today, his final day of training, he now spoke 2 new languages, Corpontian, which he spoke like a native, and Falrusian, which he still struggled with. He now spoke with a slight stutter, and his eyesight wasn't quite what it used to be. He now wore glasses. His recollections of the 7th district were now a little dim. He now remembered home as a big city. He could sing quite well all of a sudden. He had acquired a new mole behind his left ear. Funny, he hadn't noticed that before. There was a whole list of things about his identity that had changed over the past 4 or 5 days. He now had an older brother and 2 younger sisters. They seemed to have sprung up on him out of the blue. Not to talk of his mother, who seemed to have gained 3 stones in a week. He was confused, very confused. He even seemed to have acquired a new name. But this army guy was telling him he would get over his confusion. This doctor he saw every few hours was convincing him every so often that this was all part of growing up. Everyone went through a bit of confusion at some stage in his or her life. Commander Nellit had done a good job, a great job. The 10 children under his charge had all graduated from his training program with flying colors. They all knew who they were and what their tasks were. He was pleased with himself, very pleased. He was looking a promotion right in the face. He looked at his watch once again as he heard footsteps. He was a little nervous, but who wouldn't be at a time like this? It wasn't often you got to prove yourself to the president and Commander Bonzok. It was a chance in a million. He intended to make the best of it. The double doors opened and an armed guard walked in. One of the children sneezed, but he hardly noticed. He was looking anxiously at the guard who had just entered. The guard jerked his head towards the door, the cue for Nellit to take the children into the adjoining room where the president and Commander Bonzok were waiting for him. He obeyed. The room into which he marched the 7 boys and 3 girls was no smaller than a large auditorium. It was packed with scores of men dressed the same way as the guard who had just signaled to him. The president was sitting at a long table on a platform with Commander Bonzok sitting beside him. Commander Nellit marched the children to a space just in front of the platform and then turned to address the military personnel seated on the platform. Your Excellency, distinguished officers, these children and I are ready to begin, he said in a tight voice, barely concealing his nervousness. Right, said the president. We shall waste no time then. Proceed. Commander Bonzok got up from his chair and came down to the area where Nellit and the children were. He had a sheet of paper in his hand. Exchange number 20, he boomed. A little girl straightened up and said, Yes, sir, in a tiny voice. Commander Bonzok compared her to a list of figures he had on his sheet of paper and also to a photograph. He seemed satisfied, for he nodded before continuing. What's your name? He asked, this time more gently. Trin Shuvem, the girl replied. Where do you come from? Grand Betty. What does your father do? He works at the Kranbeti Galaxy Observation Institute. The questioning went on until Commander Bonzok was satisfied with the interviewee. One by one, all of the 10 children were interrogated in this way. None of them made a single mistake. Commander Nellit smiled. He knew the president and Commander Bonzok were happy. That made him happy. In 3 days' time, the next batch of his pupils would be tried and tested just like this batch. They too would be perfect. His life was becoming a dream. He was enjoying it. Have you seen to it that the transportron is ready? Commander Bonzok asked 2 officers amongst those sitting on the platform. They said yes. "Well," said the president, "I guess these kids here are ready to be dispatched. Good work, boys. I'll see to it that you are duly rewarded." The children were led out of the room and out of the building into a waiting car. Jajan could hear a group of children chanting an unintelligible rhyme. He had chanted something similar a week ago, but he couldn't remember exactly what now. The soldier had been right. He had grown up now. He was now sure he was indeed Faran Moras. Half an hour later, he found himself in a large room that contained 10 metallic machines that looked like little houses. He was led to one of them by a guard who opened a door and asked him to sit on a seat in the interior of the machine. He was frightened. The little chamber made his skin crawl. He didn't like the look of it. "Come on, we haven't got all day," the guard said to him. "It's all right, nothing's going to happen." Jajan climbed into the machine and sat on the seat. From the corner of his eye, he could see the other children doing the same. He began to relax. He realized that the interior of this machine was much smaller than he had expected from the outside. The walls were very thick. The guard closed the door and pressed a button. He began to feel dizzy as lights flashed in front of him, and a loud purring noise emanated from somewhere within the machine. He began to feel dizzy as lights flashed in front of him, and a loud purring noise emanated from somewhere within the machine. His ears popped as his body fought to keep up with the high pressure building up around him. He felt light all of a sudden. Then he was flung into oblivion as the chamber began to revolve, at first slowly, then faster, faster, faster. The last thing he remembered thinking of was a woman he vaguely recognized. She was screaming, and a man he was sure he knew was standing beside her, comforting her. As his body approached absolute weightlessness, his final thought was, "Mom!"